Good evening, friends. Hello and welcome. Here in Japan, the rainy season has ended, which means the summer season has begun, which means the spooky season is upon us. It's the time of year when ghost stories are told, horror films are released, and I like to make a little TBR of seasonally themed books. The first one, I'm thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for a really long time because the film came out on Netflix and it's directed by Charlie Kaufman, who is just one of my heroes. And I wanted to see this one, but I've been savoring it because I've been putting it off because I want to read the book first, basically. And I've got it on audiobook. I've already started it. In fact, I've nearly finished it. I've just whizzed through it, and it's a very short book. It's got this wonderful wintry vibe, and I know that like on BookTube there's this general theme and pattern of people liking to read books that match the season that we're in, but kind of in harmony with the Japanese way of thinking about scary things during the summer. The idea is that you're supposed to read scary things or consume scary kind of media because they give you chills, and that helps you like kind of cool down during the hot summer months. And this is the perfect book for that because it's just so snowy. I forget our hero's name, but she's in a car with her boyfriend and she's thinking of ending things. They have been dating for about a month or two, and she feels like maybe the relationship has reached its natural end. However, he's invited her to go out into the rural area where his parents live to meet his parents for the first time, and she's agreed to it, so she can't really say anything about ending the relationship now. She's just gonna do this family meeting thing, and then maybe afterwards end the relationship. So for now, all those thoughts that she has, all those questions that she has, have to necessarily remain inside her own interior space. And when this started, there's this nice atmosphere of her talking and thinking, and the very cold outside. It's very dark and it's getting more and more rural where they're driving. And I was thinking, I'm not sure this is a horror book. Like, I'd heard it was creepy, I'd heard it was atmospheric, but I didn't know really if it was going to go full horror, or if it was just going to be kind of a bit creepy. And yeah, really quickly things get unnerving. There's all these little conversations spoken by people who we don't know, who keep on interrupting the narrative, and they're speaking about someone who seems to have done something terrible, something violent, something that isn't exactly clear to us, the reader. The snow swirling around outside the car feels in a way like it represents the story itself, because although there's a clear direction, they're driving towards the parents' house, there's also all these things swirling around, and like little things about her past that are strange, and the boyfriend that's strange, and her own confused feelings. It's all just like cold. It's just got a great kind of mysterious core to it that we can never quite get at. It's great. I'm going to finish it really soon, and then I'll give you my full thoughts on it. Now, I'm doing this like free trial thing on audiobooks.com, so I downloaded a few books for free, and the next one is a very important one for me because as a fan of spooky things and as a fan of reading, it seems almost criminal that I have never read a Stephen King book. I think I dipped into some short stories or something like that, like in a library once or twice or something, but I've never properly sat down and committed to reading a Stephen King book. And as someone as well who likes movies, especially scary movies, but also just popular movies, like Shawshank Redemption or whatever, The Green Mile, whatever. I think he's the writer who's had most books with screen adaptations. That makes sense. Like, he's been adapted the most to screen of all living writers. And probably dead writers as well. So basically, there's a lot of Stephen King movies. I have seen a lot of Stephen King movies, as I'm sure many people have. I have a real feel for the kinds of stories he tells, the kind of themes he's interested in, and so on. And yet I've never read a book by him. So I'm going to read Carrie, or I'm going to listen to Carrie on the audiobook. This was the one I wanted to begin with. Always, because Carrie is just so close to my heart. I love the film, the old one, the Brian De Palma one, and it's, for those who don't know, it's about a young girl, a teenage girl who's going through puberty, and she's being bullied relentlessly. She has this very strict, strange, religious, conservative mother, And she's just going through all these changes. She doesn't really have any support in school or in the home. And on top of all this, she seems to be developing, alongside with along with her changing body, she's developing some kind of power. And there's like a sort of subgenre, I think, of horror, which is basically, in terms of like the content and the general form of the story, the same as the superhero origin stories. And I love this because the only difference between like superhero stories and these kind of horror stories is the tone, right? Like in the superhero stories, the teenager gets powers and they decide they need to try and help people and do good things and wear a mask, and you know, things don't always go well, but they kind of, because their bodies are changing and they realize they have this newfound power, and you know, it sort of reflects adolescence in really interesting ways, but it's always positive. Whereas horror is just like the dark evil twin version of that. And I like the horror version because, I mean, we live in a very superhero saturated society at the moment, so like the, you know, for people who aren't into all that kind of gung-ho popcorn stuff, then the horror version is just like a kind of a little bit more of a bitter and I think more realistic depiction of those kind of things. Because honestly, like if a teenager found out that they suddenly had amazing powers, you know, I just don't think it would go so smoothly. I think it would. I think in lots of cases it would end up with horrible tragedies, and that's what Carrie is all about. I love the movie, I love the story, I love, you know, Carrie as a character, and this audiobook, the second I saw that it was narrated by the one and only Sissy Spacek, I just knew this had to be my first Stephen King experience. Next, we are moving to Argentina for Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica, and translated by Sarah Moses into English. This is a book about cannibalism. Like it's clear in the premise that we're in some sort of dystopian near future where all animals are gone or dead, and you know, rather than find some sort of way to adjust to that new reality, humans have turned to cannibalism, basically eating ourselves just so that we can have some meat in our diets. So it sounds like it's a sort of a darkly satirical, maybe slightly humorous book. From the little I've heard about it, it seems to be making like political commentary about, you know, some of the horrors that went on in Argentina's history to do with disappearances and political repression and so on. So I'm very interested in this one because I saw it got lots of good reviews when it came out recently, and it sounds a bit on the nose to me. I don't know. I'm not really into cannibalism. I mean, like, as a theme, right? Ha 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 ha. I've never really enjoyed it as a way of exploring, I don't know, other issues and things to do with humanity or whatever, or just as a gross out thing. It's just not so interesting for me. And when it seems to be like some sort of political allegory, I just feel like, I don't know, I don't see how it's going to impact me, but that kind of makes me curious about this. So I'm interested to see what this book can do. And then finally, I have a real physical book, The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner by James Hogg, with a title worthy of a Panic at the Disco song. This is a story that I have been carrying around like some sort of weird totem since my university days. I think I got it when I was like 18 or something, because it was on the university reading list, and then we didn't actually study it. It's very light, easy to transport, and it's a gothic novel, and I kind of like the idea of just having a gothic novel in store or in supply, one that I didn't know yet, so it was always a secret and a mystery waiting there. And this is just, I don't know, something that I've always liked having in the background of my life, but that's going to change now. Now it's finally going to come to the foreground. I don't know what it's about. I know that James Hogg is a Scottish writer who came from a peasant background and was super famous in his lifetime, but fell out of favor after the early 1800s, and now the pendulum has finally swung back in the other direction, and since the end of the 20th century he's been recognized once again as a sort of genius. The full title on the title page is even better. It's The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner, written by himself, with a detail of curious traditionary facts and other evidence by the editor. So it looks like it's gonna have some sort of epistolary aspects to it, because there's also an an editor's narrative, I can see from the table of contents here, alongside the private memoirs themselves. So I love books like that have, like, you know, different writers, well, fictional writers coming in and with their different sort of contesting ideas about what happened, like Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe and stuff like that. I love it, and I'm really excited about this one. And that's it, a short little TBR. Last year when I did this, I coupled it with Women in Translation Month, which I don't think I'm going to do this year. I am reading a few women in translation. I mean, like on this list, there was, what was her name? Agustina Basterica, the Argentinian writer. And I'm also reading right now Comet in Moominland by Tove Jansson. Both of these are, you know, women translated into English. This one is actually, like, could be on this list of scary things because there's a comet and it's coming towards Moominland, and I just have a thing about comets. I think I find them terrifying, and there's just this sort of dread and like really existential dread throughout, as they're worried about the comet getting closer, and they keep seeing signs about the comet everywhere. Like, animals are making shapes of comets, people are carving symbols of the comet into, like, mountain walls, and it's just, for me, incredibly unnerving and paranoid. But that's Moomins, right? I mean, I love it if that's not obvious. But yeah, I've also got some other plans for reading women in translation in general, but at least for this coming August, I think I'm going to focus on the spooky side of things. So I think I'm going to end it there. That's just my short little summer TBR of spooky things. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you've read any of these, or if you are planning to, or are intrigued by anything that you've heard. And I hope you're keeping well, reading lovely things. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Night night.